Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to this the second day of the Digital for SME Roundtable. We had a wonderful, lively first day yesterday, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion that will unfold throughout day two. To help set the scene for this discussion, we decided to have this pre-event special session, Meet the Authors, which we would like to give our Digital for SME network and country delegates of the OECD Working Party on SMEs and entrepreneurship the chance to discuss the contents of the new OECD report that was launched yesterday. The name is the Digital Transformation of SMEs. I'm going to do like my boss is always doing, Angel Gurria. He's always the Secretary General showing the book. So today, as we don't have, a physical meeting, in-person meeting, it doesn't happen often, but still we have the publication that is also available for you all. And I ask the team, by the way, to again show in the chat the link, to put the link for all participants if they would like to have the full report with them. So this new report looks at the latest evidence on digital adoption by SMEs. It includes early evidence on the impact of COVID-19 and an overview of the many ways governments around the world are supporting SMEs in their digital journey. The publication also contains a deeper look at issues of digital security, the platform economy, blockchain, and artificial intelligence. All these things were discussed yesterday already and probably today as well. And beyond our traditional methodology of research, we have been able to also to draw some new guidelines and insight from many of participants of the Digital for SMEs network, especially through the real life experience of entrepreneurs who had to adapt their businesses overnight to cope with the pandemic. And it was really truly inspiring to learn how they have changed their business models, how they have seized new opportunities, but also to hear of their challenges and concerns in making this digital shift amid the continued uncertainty. So we had, over last year, several thematic webinars with a wide range of stakeholders on the policy and business responses to the pandemic, which were also useful to reflect further on the key research questions underlying this work and ensure its greatest relevance to the broad SME policy community, not the government, much broader. And that's why I'm really delighted to be able to launch this report with you today. We're going to have Sandrine Kergoash, who is going to present the report shortly. This report was produced by Sandrine, but also there are many other contributors and also supervisor of the report. I mentioned Lucia Cusmano. I know that Marco Bianchini, who oversees this work, this roundtable of Digital for SMEs, also provided substantial input, and Céline Kaufmann, of course, the head of division. But first, to kick off, I would like to introduce the moderator of this session, who is Mr. Martin Godel. Martin Godel is the head of SME policy at the State Secretariat for Economic Affairs of Switzerland, but he's also, most importantly for us, the chair of the OECD Working Party of SMEs and Entrepreneurship, and he's going to give some welcoming remarks and moderate the session. Thank you very much. Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lamia. And welcome to everybody. Thank you for these introductory works. I would like to welcome ambassadors here in the room, ambassadors and members of the OECD Working Party and other distinguished guests. And in particular, I want to welcome the small businesses in the audience who have joined this special session ahead of day 2 of the Digital for SME Roundtable to meet the authors. It is great to have you here from the SMEs. We are always talking about SMEs, but we usually do not have SMEs in our meeting room. So I think this is really, really fantastic. And of course, connected and directly necessary when we want to discuss about the digital transformation of SMEs. Lamia already said yesterday, we heard the Secretary General recalling in his opening remarks that to go digital, failing to go digital is not just a missed opportunity for SMEs, but a missed opportunity for us all to build and rebuild more sustainable and resilient futures. And digitalization offering a range of opportunities for SMEs to improve performance and compete on a more even footing with larger firms. However, we do witness a gap in adoption, smaller businesses lagging behind large firms in the digital transformation. And we have also seen evidence that this gap in digitalization operations is having a detrimental impact on SME productivity, their capacity to offer higher salaries or to keep track with innovative practices. And this gap is in fact contributing to widening inequalities within society across people and places. And in order to address that, to narrow the wage gap, to narrow the productivity gap, we need to close the digital gap. So we need to help SMEs to fully embrace the benefits and basically to win the fourth industrial revolution. However, this SMEs cannot do on their own. And a lot is necessary. We will hear more about this from Sandrine and in the report, but policymaking definitely has a strong role to play. On the report itself, that is being presented and discussed today, it is a response to a call from governments to get guidance on how best they could support SMEs in going digital. So we in the Working Party representing the governments asked the OECD to come up with this type of production and insights so that at the end, it can inform our policy making. And I have learned that this is actually, it's a 2 years work all behind. And I can assure you that the Working Party on SMEs and entrepreneurship has placed the highest priority on SME digitalization in its 2019-20 program of work. So this is really a flagship report. It's a key part that we are looking forward to, that we mandated the OECD secretary to come up with. So the report goes into many areas, and I'm not going to touch on that because we will hear much more about it. Of course, no introduction possible without mentioning the C word that we are all doing. And for the C word, I should probably wear my mask here. So the report could not come at a more relevant time for SMEs because COVID-19 is still really having its tight grip on our economies. And the digitalization is a matter of life or death for many small SMEs. And we have seen in overall, but also, of course, in my own country, going digital has proved to be the only way for many SMEs to stay in business during the past months. And the report reflects on converging evidence worldwide that up to 70% of SMEs have adopted new digital practices to survive, from smart working solutions to online sales. And yesterday we have heard some great examples that have been shown. So the work does not stop here with this report. On the contrary, the Digital Transformation of SMEs report is a cornerstone for future SME digital policy development. And we will build more on that work in the future. So without further ado, I would like to hand over the floor to Sandrine, because this session here is called Meet the Author, and I'm very pleased to introduce Sandrine and looking forward to your presentation. Sandrine, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Martin, and good morning, good afternoon all. I'm really pleased to present you this work we have been doing over the past 2 years. Let me just move to
this before, don't you?
Sorry.
Is it working, Sandrine? It was working before. I could see your screen before.
Okay.
Put it back up, and then at the bottom of the page, you see this little thing. There you go. Yeah.
Excellent.
Sorry for the for the mistake. Okay, so basically, I'm very pleased to present you this report. SME have been lagging in the race to digital for several years already. And if we look at the average diffusion rate of different type of technology, social media, electronic invoicing, cloud computing, we can see that diffusion rate among large firms, medium-sized firms, and small firms are very different. And the digital gap is striking and persistent across all technology era. What we can see also is that to some extent, this gap is not so large in some specific domain, in some specific technology era. The use of social media, the use of e-commerce, or the interaction of small businesses with the government through digital channel, which means that SMEs tend to digitalize some function like marketing or administration first. But what is also emerging from this is that this gap is enlarging as technology become more sophisticated, like for big data analytics, or when some mass are required for implementation, like for using software like ERP or CRM for integrating the processes, the back office and the front office. When we look at cross-industry penetration of this technology, here, for instance, the percentage of people, employees that are using computer with an access to the internet, we can see that there is a progress, meaning that firms are digitalizing, but not at the same pace, at the same rhythm. And in some sectors, like the information and communication services or professional services that are very intensive in terms of knowledge, some aspect of the digitalization is almost completed so far. But when we look at other sectors, like accommodation and food services or administration and support services, the level of digitalization is much lower. What we can see also is in some sectors, there is a slight catching up. In transport and construction industry, for instance, the penetration of this computer and the connection to internet is advancing faster. Now, if you remember the first slide I show you, which to some extent show you the shape of the digitalization among large, medium-sized and small firms. Now, if we look at the same time of charts, but by industry, what we can see is that there are more striking differences across industry, actually, in the shape of the digitalization than across firm size. If we take, for instance, the information, the first chart on the top left side of your screen, if we look at information and communication services, there is a more intensive use of all sorts of technology. Now, if we look at the opposite side on the construction sector, for instance, basically the digitalization of firms is done through interaction with the government. So there are not only differences in terms of intensity of digitalization, but also in terms of the diversity of patterns, of digitalization patterns that are taking place. Now, SMEs in this configuration, in this context, are missing opportunity to reduce cost and to compete on a more even footing with large companies. Let's take an online platform, for instance. Online platform, the purpose of online platform is to connect users. And by connecting users, this could help SMEs to reduce cost of search, advertising, transportation, communication. It could also help them reach new market even abroad, and of course, market beyond the boundary of the natural or traditional ecosystem. This is also a way to outsource and get access to business intelligence services like data analytics. Now let's take another type of technology, the cloud computing. Cloud computing, it's an opportunity to build IT capacity. It's an opportunity to access pay-as-you-go services, flexible, scalable, on demand, without investment upfront or maintenance cost. It's also a way to access basic technology like emails, or to leapfrog to much more advanced technology like AI, intelligence artificial. Now let's talk about artificial intelligence. The new advances in AI have enabled a greater automation and predictive capacity. Firms can better anticipate market and price fluctuations. They can better assess risk and improve asset management, improve automation, and for instance, very simple examples, the customer services, chat bots that can help the firms to address much more simple demand at lower cost. It could also help firms to improve market segmentation and customize and differentiate their product and their services, which is at the benefit of smaller and more flexible firms. And last but not least, the blockchain. The value of blockchain is to decentralize information in a very transparent way. So this helps increase the potential for disintermediation, so lowering transaction and agency cost, and also increasing the potential for greater accountability and trust among actors, which means, again, lower transaction and agency costs. And there are applications in many different domains emerging, like accessing finance, managing the supply chain with better traceability of product and certification, or being able to enforce contract and ensure that there are automatic transfer of funds once the contract is executed. So there are opportunities, and the COVID-19 crisis has actually giving momentum to SME digital transformation. If we look at the result of the Facebook, OECD, and World Bank survey on businesses during the COVID crisis, we clearly see that firms have increased their use of online e-commerce and online sales during the crisis, and also in relation to the containment measure. The places where the containment measure were more stringent, firms have increased their sales online. We also have monitored over the last year business surveys that were conducted worldwide, and this business survey converged. Up to 70% of SMEs have changed their practices regarding to digitalization to survive, moving online, selling online, adopting smart working solutions. And in this context, online platforms have played a critical role because they help SMEs to connect to market and help them maintain operations during the lockdowns. Now, we still have some challenges to face. And these challenges are the same as before COVID. Basically, SME and entrepreneurship performance is related to their business environment, the quality of their business environment, and their access to strategic resources, as well as, of course, the policy framework. In all this era, SMEs are facing some challenges. They are facing legal uncertainty, for instance, in terms of liability. They are using AI and they have not the capacity to audit the algorithm and the result of the algorithm. There are some concern about distortion in competition, especially due to strong network effects and the role online platform or large platform are having in the markets. There are also some issues, and we discussed this extensively yesterday, about the access to digital infrastructure and the interoperability of systems. There are issues about financing, because here SMEs are facing a double challenge. One challenge is about accessing finance for a small business, which is the traditional issue SMEs face, but also finding funding for innovation investment when collateral are software, intangibles, and where the return on investment are uncertain. And this is a major issue, there are some skills gap and a lack of digital awareness, lack of data culture in SMEs. And last but not least, there is this issue of access to innovation assets. SMEs need to access data, needs to protect their data, they need to access technology, and the more they access technology, the more they will be able to access other technology, because there are some complementarity at play. And there are some reputation and risk, because if they, for instance, are using AI solution without understanding what is behind, that could be a major, that could have been a major impact on the reputation. And reputation is a key asset for an SME. And not all SME have the capacity to undertake this transformation. And when they go digital, they tend to outsource digital solution. And I will provide you 3 examples. First is the use of data platform, the digital platform. This could help them to get access to data analytics, to better understand the market and the customers. Second is when it comes to digital security, SMEs will either turn to external consultants, or count on security by design feature of the product and services they are using. And this was clearly mentioned yesterday during the intervention and the video of SMEs that mentioned that security actually, they just hope that it will be here through the products they use. And the third example is AI. By accessing software as a services or machine learning as a services software, they could leapfrog to AI solution, while actually they do not have any AI skills or specialists inside. Now, when we look at COVID and the impact of COVID on the digital environment, it's already clear that the crisis has exacerbated the impact of existing digital divide. And here I'm mentioning one example, which is the gap in connectivity. Why? Because connectivity, high-speed broadband, is to some extent a prerequisite for the transformation of SMEs. And if we look at the penetration rate of high-speed broadband over the past decade, compare the country with the lowest penetration rate and thus with the highest penetration rate, we can see that the gap has been increasing steadily over the decades and even accelerating over the past 5 years. If we look at the gap between small and large firms, again, the picture is the same. The gap between the smallest and the largest firms is increasing in all countries. This, of course, is to some extent the context in which we have been evolving before the crisis. But now the crisis is also raising its own risk. And one major risk that has been emerging is a digital security risk and the attack, which have been increasing in terms of number and speed and sophistication over the past years. How do SMEs handle the situation? Probably not very well, because first, they are not really well prepared for facing very sophisticated attacks. They do not have the internal capacity. They do not invest much on digital security. And historically, SMEs have a smaller surface attacks because they have lower digital intensity, because they are processing a smaller volume of data, so smaller value, less attractive for attackers. But they are turned to be a very easy target as compared to larger firms. And they have also become a kind of backdoor entry point for attackers to target more valuable targets, which are actually the large firms. So now, where are we? We need to build on this momentum to rebuild better. There is a very large policy consensus on the need to speed the digital transformation of SMEs. It's very high in all countries on the policy agenda, but there is also a very large diversity of approaches. Our country, our government are trying to advance this agenda. It's related, of course, to the complexity of the digitalization process, but it's also related to the complexity of the SME policy context. So the scope of the policy intervention is extremely broad. Some countries have tried to mainstream this issue into a broader policy agenda. Some others have more targeted approach, and sometimes with a place-based focus or industry or sectoral focus. But then the policy actions that we can observe is spanning across a very broad range of policy areas. So intends to scale up SME internal capacity, so support program, training, awareness campaign, easing SME access to strategic resources, incentive to develop the fintech ecosystem, or to provide incentive for innovators to develop a supply of digital solutions for SMEs. Some intends to develop network where SMEs will be involved, and hubs and platforms where they could learn and experience a digital solution. Of course, some focus on the business environment, the regulatory framework, the intents by countries to reinforce the digitalization of public services that could be actually a very powerful instrument to speed the transformation of SMEs. And some governance effort, especially in the era of AI and blockchain that are new emerging policy era, and where everything has to be done. Governance, strategic framework have to be set, governance arrangement have to be implemented, and consultancy settings and coordination mechanism have to be created. So what are the ways forward? The report actually is highlighting some main policy consideration. Government policymakers have to remove the regulatory barrier and market distortion, expand infrastructure coverage, and we discussed this yesterday, enable greater but safer, and I put this word in red because it's probably one of the more urgent needs regarding SME digitalization, is about security. There needs to be able to move on the digital environment in a safe way. Adapting action to the specific industry where SME operates, but also to the type of function they want to transform. And building more evidence, more comparable data, more sectoral study. We need to understand better the digital journey of SMEs, successful journey, but also not successful journey, because we need to inform all the actors, SMEs lagging, SMEs at the frontier. We need to inform large firms, platform have a key role to play, because not only they are key actors in this transformation, but they also can give access to a very large amount of evidence on what is going on with SMEs. So we need international cooperation, we need knowledge sharing, and we need the digital for SMEs to keep moving and to keep advancing on this direction. So I would like to thank you for your attention. I would like to stress that this report is made under the guidance of the OECD Working Party on SMEs and Entrepreneurship. It's not the end, it's just the beginning, because it's a cornerstone for future research. And I would like to acknowledge and thank all the authors that are contributing to this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sandrine. Thank you for your excellent presentation, as always. I'd like to thank all the authors who have contributed to this huge piece. For those who have not been able yet to put their hands on it or looking into it, it counts 272 pages, if I can see that right. So this is a massive wealth of information put in your hands about a very precise topic on digitalization for SMEs. So we are at timing wise now at the possibility to have a short round. I'd like to stress that we would have to stop at about 10 to 5 to 12, because then we will start with the Digital for SME second day. However, I would like to open the floor. If we have the possibility that you can ask questions to the authors, we would love to have them answering your questions. Please also use the chat. You might also be able to write some questions in there. And if there is any chance that I can give back the floor to Sandrine and the authors to answer questions, then we shall do that. So please, if you can focus on a few questions, then afterwards we will have the opportunity to discuss more during the course of this day. So you know how it works. You have the flag. You can raise your hand digitally here on Zoom if you would like to intervene. You have a maximum of 3 minutes, then I will have to stop you, but I would like to invite you to be shorter. And if you can focus on a few questions of particular interest to the authors, that would be great. Then I would be able to give the floor back to the authors. Great. So I would like to see if there is anybody who has raised the hand. I have not yet seen anybody. Please come forward. I see one flag, but where is it? Here, from Hungary, Andras. Andras from Hungary, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Martin, and good morning, distinguished colleagues. And Martin, allow me to start my intervention by congratulating the OECD, to Lamia, Sandrine, to Lucia, and to the team for this wonderful report that you have put forward. And Sandrine, if I were there in person, I would use this opportunity to ask you to sign this copy for me. So it's really something that we need to use. We need to put forward. And also, I would like to congratulate to Martin, not only for his tireless work as the chair of the working party, but also his engaging moderation. See, you already have many flags. On the report, it is indeed very helpful. Response and guidance for the governments and policymakers how to help SMEs in the digital transformation. And it is indeed very relevant because the whole world has gone, allow me to say that not just we're going, it has gone digital in just 1 year of time because of COVID-19. Nevertheless, I believe that the most important question that we have to raise right now is that how SMEs will continue their digital path with the same pace and same dedication once, you know, it is not about survival. We saw in the presentation that 70% of the SMEs has adopted new digital ways to survive in a very fast way. But just yesterday at one of the sessions, I heard 2 SMEs talking about that, like, for them, it's a must right now, and they will see how they will be able to cope with digitalization once the coronavirus is over. It is also very important to flag that digital divide and gap between SMEs and large companies are growing. Let not blame the large companies for that. Rather, let's have governments and stakeholders work together to ensure that SMEs have the right understanding of digitalization, including privacy and security issues, and the right skills for being able to leverage on the digital technologies. So therefore, we need SMEs to build capacity, not just infrastructure, but also in human resources, and also building networks, you know, to be able to help each other, help their peers, and support each other. And there we need OECD's help in order to move on with that. One thing that I would like to do as to finish my intervention is to flag that in the presentation, Sandrine said very rightly that transportation and construction industry are 2 advancing companies where they are very much seeing advances in digitalization. But also, I would like to flag here that it can also be a threat for self-employed or individual entrepreneurs in these sectors as well, which is why I would like to finish my intervention by saying that building trust in digitalization is probably one of the biggest challenges that we have to tackle in the near future, so that at the end of the day, once this whole thing is over, and maybe that there will be more critical voices with regard to digitalization, we will have the right answers to them, which are already set in this report. Maybe, you know, more with regard to why digitalization is so important and not just a must. This, I would like to finish by saying that, as the report rightly says, let's use the momentum and build on this. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andras. Thank you very much. Very appreciated for your intervention. Thank you. We have now from Vodafone, Parm with us. Please, Parm, you have the floor.
Hi, thank you, and good morning, everyone. First off, I just wanted to say thank you to Sandrine for sharing the findings from the report, and I look forward to reading it in great detail. Well, it might be over a weekend or so, but I am very pleased to say that the findings coming from the report are very much aligned with the findings that Vodafone found in a report that we launched last September 2020 on SME digitalization, to understand the barriers SMEs face for digitalization. Our report included market research with 1,200 SMEs across UK, Spain, Italy, and Germany, and found that SMEs that have digitized are more likely to find new business opportunities during the pandemic. And in fact, the most digitalized businesses highlighted opportunities more than double the rate of the least digitized. So I think that just goes to show the strength of digitalization for SMEs during this pandemic economy. One of the key things our research shows SME digitalization policy that addresses three elements: availability, capacity, and capability. In terms of Hi,
Harm?
Did I drop off?
Yes, you got cut off. Please just repeat the last part. Thank you.
Oh, sorry about that. I am in rural Canada right now. So going off of what we were talking about yesterday, the connectivity in Canada
Absolutely.
is quite poor. So in terms of digitalization policy, I was just saying we need to have a policy addressing gaps supporting investment in areas where infrastructure is not available, offer vouchers for digital investment, and lastly, deliver additional support measures to support capability. My question is that, you know, all member states face different challenges. While all governments are looking to improve the rate of digitalization, it's important to have a common benchmark. So I'm curious, Sandrine, if the report looks at this, a common benchmark, and if so, how?
Thank you very much. Great question. Thank you very much. We'll pick that up. Then I'd like to give the floor to Colin from the US.
Thank you, Martin. Can everybody hear me just fine? Just want to make sure
Yes.
there's no connection line.
Excellent.
Excellent. Thank you. So just sort of brief comment and then a question. So first, Sandrine, just wanted to thank you and everybody who worked on this report for, you know, your time and labor on this. This is a very extensive undertaking, and again, something that is sorely needed with respect to COVID. And personally, I thank you for dealing with my often very tedious comments on things at times, particularly with respect to the blockchain chapter. We really appreciated the opportunity to add some input on that. You know, as the Secretary General said yesterday, you know, this is something that it's not just a missed opportunity. This is a case of really where failure is not an option. We're seeing, again, you know, so many of these SMEs have shifted to sort of crash procedures for digitalization that really need to be taken permanent long term. And this is particularly critical for SMEs owned by and operated by historically disadvantaged groups. So persons of color, women, other people who are historically economically disadvantaged communities. And that would be that's definitely something that's in keeping with our new administration here in the United States, and that we very much would like to see sort of, you know, some work going forward on in terms of how can we make sure that all SMEs are able to access this, you know, not just those that conventionally might have more access than others. And I guess my question then too is just in terms of sort of broadening the universe of people that this could benefit by. What can be done to scale some of these policies down, because not just to SMEs proper, but to the smallest SME. And by that, I mean the SME of one, the skilled independent worker, the gig worker, etc. This is a topic that many of our economies are seeing, and indeed many of our SME participants yesterday alluded to using more gig and independent workers. So there is an opportunity and indeed a necessity to make sure that gig and independent workers have similar access to getting these tools. And I'm just curious to see, you know, what kind of synergies might we see between established conventional policy on SME digitalization, and then how can we bring that down so that, you know, say, you know, the one person who might be looking to go into business for themselves for the first time, either because they want to or because they have to because of COVID, how can they take advantage of this as well?
Thank you very much, Colin, who picked it up as well. the orientation towards the independent workers. And let's go to Belgium. Laurence, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you. I'm really delighted to finally see the final version and the high quality of this report, whose progress we've been following up on during several meetings of the OECD Working Party on SME and entrepreneurship. So I just wanted to go a little bit further into the topic of cybersecurity, which is of growing importance for SME, but is still lacking a lot of awareness amongst them. Also, although cybersecurity incidents can have much greater impact on business continuity and survival for SMEs than larger companies, the report underlines that SMEs tend to invest less in their digital security. And this is a real issue. We must realize that this is likely to have consequences in the medium and long term. 3 points I wanted to mention linked to this. First, it is really crucial to close the cybersecurity gap as quickly as possible. Digitalization for SMEs should not be pursued, should not start without thinking first about cybersecurity, for fear of weakening instead of strengthening our SME tissue in the medium-long term. And this is particularly true for the micro and small enterprises in the traditional, so in the non-digital sectors, which were often forced to adopt digital solutions in a rush in order to survive to the crisis. And they need help and training. And in Belgium, we are building a cybersecurity scan, a kind of self-evaluation tool that is specifically targeted at those micro and small enterprises of non-digital sectors, so the traditional sectors. And it is based on a few questions, easy language, specific topics, interactivity, explanatory videos, and in the end, individualized advice. Second, I think it would be interesting to know not only in absolute terms, but also in relative terms, what proportion of their turnover SMEs invest and how much they should invest in cybersecurity compared to larger companies. We can certainly imagine fixed costs and therefore a bigger financial effort for smaller companies, which end up being at a competitive disadvantage. Therefore, the question we should address is how can we help SMEs, and in particular micro and small enterprises, to overcome this disadvantage. And my last point will concern insurance policies, since we see that SMEs tend to purchase less digital security insurance policies than the larger companies. Why? Maybe lack of interest, lack of awareness, but also maybe a mismatch between existing insurance policies and the SME needs. Therefore, a wide offer of digital security insurance policies in terms of pricing, in terms of the extent of the insurance, adapted to the heterogeneous needs of SMEs seems of crucial importance to reassure the SMEs that go digital, to reduce the risks they take, and to help them overcome part of their disadvantage compared to large companies. I think this should really be analyzed further, and we should also wonder which role the public policy sector can play to favor this. So thanks again for the extensive work on this report.
Thank you very much, Laurence. That's a very interesting documentation and support that you mentioned for this support scheme that you have mentioned, how to that SMEs can go along with digitalization and cybersecurity in particular. I would then like to give the floor back to Sandrine. You have a lot of questions, I think, from the US, from Parm from Vodafone, and Laurence from Belgium. However, I would also like to hint at the question that was posted in the chat. That is from Hong Bui from the University of Bath in the United Kingdom. And his question is, what can OECD do in influencing governments to promote and support digitalized SMEs within OECD and non-OECD countries? Now, of course, my personal view is that with exactly this kind of reports and this kinds of events, that is a huge contribution that the OECD is doing to its members and also the non-members. However, maybe Sandrine, if you can have a few words about an overview on other streams of work within the same area. Sandrine, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Martin, and thank you all for your comments, your feedback, your nice feedback, and your questions. I would start with the reference made by Colin actually on the independent worker, self-employed. But I mean, the issue is even broader than that, because today our statistical system are focused on SMEs and excluding the microfirms and self-employed, which means that we are completely blind on what's going on with firms with less than 10 employees. This is about 90% of the enterprises. There are reasons for this question of scale, of the cost, and also because most of our data are based on survey data, and this company typically do not have time to fill in a survey. So we need to find another way to follow these enterprises and to better understand what they need to move on and to change their practices. What I didn't enter into the details, but in terms of policy making, when I say it's a complex issue, it's a very complex issue, because if you see this chart with this bubble I show about the main area to improve SME performance, it's basically crossing across all policy domain, all policy, all ministry, all departments, which means that not only an issue of coordination, but there is an issue of policy making. How could we intervene at the same time on competition policies, on technology policies, on research policy, because there is also some dimension about developing digital tools, developing digital solutions for SMEs, for microfirms. So there are different levels. I think there are different levels of intervention, and there will not be. I don't like very much this expression because it's very much used. There is not one solution for all, but it's probably a way of mixing and combining policies, and it will depend on the local context. It will depend on the industry where the firm is operating. It will depend on the place where the firm is operating. So there are synergies to find, and this synergy can only be found if we succeed to work together and to work across ministries and across policy areas. In terms of having a common benchmark, that's also a very difficult question, because digitalization is one word, but behind this word, there are many different technologies and many different applications and many different types of applications depending on the firms that are using this technology. So having a common benchmark to compare digitalization, the progresses we made, and the effectiveness of policy, because at the end of the day, that's what we want to track, it will be difficult. It will be difficult to have only one number. It will be difficult to have only one tool. And again, it's about mixing the approaches, mixing the measurement, and mixing the tools. Now, how can OECD help government in that direction? Exactly as Martin said, and precisely what we are doing now is trying to develop new data, trying to push the measurement agenda, trying to find new evidence. And sometimes evidence, it's not about a number, it's not about data, it's about case studies, it's about experience, it's about sharing views, it's about dialogue. And this is the space where the OECD can help, because we are a forum for discussion, we have network, we have this analytical research and statistical capacity to advance in that direction. So I really believe this is the way we can help.
Thank you, Sandrine. And Marco could maybe come in and give some information about where to find this report and any other information. Marco, you have the floor.
Absolutely. I wanted, first of all, for the report, we have posted the link in the chat, and you will see. So now it is officially published on the OECD library. So from there, you can access the report. It was under embargo until yesterday, but today it's fully available through the usual OECD channel. And I just wanted to complement briefly on what Sandrine said. I have to say I'm a bit free riding here because Sandrine has already answered all the tougher questions. So I'll just pick up on two of the comments, and especially in one that came from also to thank Colin from the US from his comments. He was referring to his comments to the blockchain chapter, and we really appreciated it as well, because when we are discussing of a technology that puts at its heart a changing in the conception of governance, again, through this decentralized transparency, of course, the devil is very much in the details. So I think also this kind of feedback from the countries and from an expert like Colin in seeing really through it, it really helped us also to clarify it in the report. And the second point I wanted to connect to what Andras said from the comment from Hungary related to how to keep this up with SMEs once it is not anymore about survival, which I think it's a very, very important question, and what will come up after this pandemic will be gone, what will be the core question actually. And I just wanted to refer here to something I thought it was very interesting in an exchange we had with our colleagues in New Zealand, also in the, I see Minister Nash also logged in, so good evening or good morning. And talking with this team, they were saying, yes, because in New Zealand now they are in a different phase, let's say, since they've managed the pandemic particularly well. And so now they are exactly facing this. Many SMEs saying we digitalized for the crisis, but now we go back to the old way of doing things. So one point is also to think of this, of the digitalization also connected to other objectives that can be of public goods. So one, of course, is about productivity, sales, etc. But another very important one could be about sustainability and environmental sustainability. So connecting these two topics that can really go together and can also give this kind of visions to the SMEs to keep it as a part of the business processes. So that was all. Thanks again for your participation and comments.
Thank you very much, Marco. And with this, we are coming to the end. I have seen that the chair of the next session, Minister Stuart Nash from New Zealand, has already entered the virtual room. So he is seeing us. Welcome, Stuart, and I'm very much looking forward to the next part here. And I would like to thank again the authors for this great report. I thank you all for asking questions and for this interactive opportunity we have to exchange on this. And it's now 11:55. We'll make a 5-minute coffee break, virtual coffee break, and then come back at 12 o'clock sharp and start with the second day of the Digital for SME. Thank you very much and see you soon.